Kim Kardashian robbery is pretty old news at this point. I heard about it at the time, but I don't really keep up with the Kardashians, so I didn't really look too far into it. But recently I saw a post on Reddit discussing a conspiracy theory surrounding it, and it kind of just sent me down the rabbit hole. There were actually a number of theories surrounding the incident, so I thought I'd summarise them all in this video. If you enjoy mysteries, true crime, disappearances and conspiracies, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. I also have a Patreon and a PayPal, so if you're interested in supporting the channel, feel free to check it out, a link will be in the description. Before I get started, I just wanted to say that I don't mean any disrespect to Kim Kardashian by making a video on this. Everything that will be discussed in this video is just theories, it's not fact, and a lot of it's not even my opinion. Assuming everything happened how Kim claims, that must have been an extremely traumatic event, and I'm not trying to make light of it here. I've seen people online saying that she deserved it and that she should just get over it because she's a celebrity, but obviously that's ridiculously insensitive, so please don't make any comments of that nature on this video. I'll start by summarising what happened, mainly using an article on thecut.com, which is a concise account including sources throughout. In 2016, Kim was staying in Paris for Fashion Week, and on the 3rd of October, her sisters Kourtney and Kendall went out partying, leaving Kim alone in the hotel. Kim's bodyguard, Pascal Duvier, was with Kourtney and Kendall at the time. Around 2:30 AM, 5 men, armed and wearing ski masks and police apparel, broke into the residence where Kim had an apartment. They threatened the concierge with a weapon and handcuffed him, then forced him to open Kim's room. 2 of the men entered the room and one held a gun to her head, then tied her up and locked her in the bathroom. She begged the robbers to spare her life, and thankfully she wasn't physically harmed, though later described it as the worst moment of her life. The robbers stole Kim's engagement ring that was worth $4.5 million, plus an estimated $6.7 million worth of jewels and 2 smartphones before escaping on push bikes. Kim was able to break free of the restraints and call for help after the men left. She gave a statement to the police, who at the time believed the robbery was orchestrated by a highly organised gang who planned out the crime in advance. Kim left Paris right after giving her statement, and her husband Kanye West met her at the airport. He found out about the robbery while doing a show, so cancelled mid-set. There were a couple of individuals who had been pestering Kim at the time, who some people thought might be involved somehow. Vitaly Sadiuk is known for, quote, pranking various celebrities and had, on 2 separate occasions, attempted to make inappropriate contact with Kim in public. One incident occurred just a few days prior to the robbery. Though he's never been considered a suspect, and I'd be surprised if he was involved. His thing is annoying celebrities, not robbing them. Police questioned a photographer who allegedly gained access to a restaurant where Kim and her family had eaten earlier that week, dressed as a policeman, though I assume he was ruled out too, as I couldn't find any information to suggest he was pursued as a suspect. Now we'll get into the theories. I'm going to briefly discuss a couple of the minor ones before we get into the main one, which is that this might have all been staged. Pink Panthers is the name given to an international jewel thief network consisting of over 200 members from different countries including Serbia and Croatia. They have stolen millions of dollars worth of gold and diamonds from Japan, Germany, Spain, Australia and the UK, as well as other countries. Members of the Pink Panthers have been arrested and convicted over the years, though still only a very small percentage of the group. The rest remain unidentified. They were suspected to be involved in the heist of a jewellery store in Paris in 2007 and 2008, and maybe that wasn't the only time they planned a robbery in Paris. Similarities can be drawn between this robbery and the modus operandi of the Pink Panthers. They tend to be armed but try to use minimal violence. They have even been known to dress as police officers or in other disguises to gain easier access to properties. The robbery on Kim more or less went down exactly how you'd expect it to if the Pink Panthers were involved, though they've never been cited as suspects, and it would also be unusual for them to target one individual as opposed to a store or a museum. There were certain details surrounding the events of that night that made some people, even the police at one point, believe that it might have been an inside job. The robbers probably picked the best time to strike, when Kim was alone and her family and her bodyguard Pascal were all out. This could have been lucky timing, or it could mean that the robbers were surveilling the area and knew when Kim would be alone. I doubt there'd even be much that one bodyguard could do against 5 armed men, but I suppose it'd still be easier if no one else was around. It's possible that someone tipped them off. This could have been a member of staff at the hotel, or even Pascal the bodyguard, though he's never considered a suspect and the Kardashians don't believe he was involved. In 2018 though, AIG, the insurance company who covered the cost of the jewellery that was stolen, sued Pascal for $6.1 million, claiming he and his security company were partly responsible for leaving Kim alone in her room. I personally think it's pretty unlikely that Pascal was involved, though I wouldn't rule out maybe a member of staff tipping off the robbers. Pascal even thought that might have been the case, and on Good Morning Britain implied that he didn't think it was a coincidence that the robbers seemed to know exactly where to go. Some suspect that the concierge might have been involved, and while he was questioned by police initially, he isn't considered a suspect now. One of Kim's chauffeurs was later arrested in connection with the crime, though it's unclear whether or not he was actually involved. There are a number of outlandish theories relating to the incident, one being that robbery wasn't actually the motive and instead it was a warning to Kanye West. I'm sure you've heard theories about Kanye being in the Illuminati, and something that his questionable behaviour in the last few years has something to do with him wanting out. Maybe the Illuminati planned the robbery as a warning to Kanye if he tried to leave. Or maybe Kanye was somehow involved in something with some shady people who just wanted to teach him a lesson. Another theory is that Taylor Swift orchestrated the whole thing, because there was a rivalry between Taylor, Kanye and Kim around that time. A few months before, Kim outed Taylor for being publicly upset about the lyrics about her in Kanye's song Famous, releasing a recording of a phone call where Taylor approved the lyrics, though more recently it turned out she hadn't actually agreed to every line. But at the time, Taylor's reputation was in the gutter, so some believe she set up this robbery to get back at Kim. Another theory floating around at the time was that Donald Trump set up the robbery. It was around the time of the presidential debate, and when he'd been accused of tax evasion, so it would serve as a distraction. As soon as news got out that Kim had been targeted for a burglary, rumours instantly began circulating that the whole thing had been made up or that it had been staged somehow. I think this was probably partly because a lot of people hate the Kardashians, but there were a few discrepancies in the story. It doesn't seem clear whether Kim was actually targeted or whether it was a crime of opportunity. Kim claims the robbers knew about her ring, and that's probably why they targeted her. It was suggested that because Kim often posts on social media showing off her wealth and her current locations, the gang might have seen these posts and planned the robbery. Though the concierge, Abdul Rahman, we'll call him Abdul, doesn't think that the target was Kim, but rather anyone who had something that they could steal. There seems to be differing reports on how many robbers there were that night. In an interview with Entertainment Tonight, Abdul said there were 3, but other sources say 5. It's possible that there were 5 men in total, but only 3 entered the building, though that isn't made clear. Some sources say there were 2 men though, such as OK.co.uk, which used quotes from Kim where she said both men and described what the 2 men were wearing. There are also a few details that differ between Kim and Abdul's accounts of that night, and things just don't quite add up. Let's start from the beginning. Abdul claims that he was behind the desk at the hotel and he saw the gang behind the glass door motioning for him to open it. Because of the outfits, he assumed that they were police officers of some kind, so let them in. As soon as they entered, they pointed a gun at him, handcuffed him, and told him not to look at them. Which is a bit strange in itself. Why pose as police officers if you're just going to go straight in with the gun? He said 2 of the men were wearing balaclavas and a third man had a high collar pulled up to his eyes. Abdul said it took him several minutes to convince the men that there were no security cameras or armed guards. The fact that there was no CCTV footage is in itself very strange. Either the hotel didn't have cameras, which is odd considering so many celebrities stay there, or they just don't have footage of that night specifically. Despite Abdul saying in the Entertainment Tonight interview that the robbers didn't target Kim, it just so happened that her room was the first they got to, Kim claimed that the robbers asked Abdul where the rapper's wife was, and Abdul said that himself as well in a different interview. That's a pretty big detail to get wrong. It's the difference in Kim actually being targeted or it being a crime of opportunity. Abdul let the robbers into Kim's apartment where she was awake and in bed, and at this point we have another discrepancy. Kim claims that the men were shouting in French and she didn't understand most of what they were saying, but she did make out that they repeatedly kept shouting, "the ring," and motioned for her to give them her engagement ring. Abdul, on the other hand, said that they just kept asking for money, not Kim's ring, and that when Kim handed over the ring, they didn't seem to realise how much it was worth. Abdul recalled how one man grabbed and shook Kim with a gun to her head, though I couldn't find any mention of Kim saying that. In a reenactment in an Inside Edition video, Abdul seems to imply that Kim was sat on the bed throughout, though in other interviews he said that she was dragged out of the bed. They both agree that Abdul had to be a translator for Kim and the robbers to communicate, but neither go into detail on what was spoken about, despite Abdul claiming that it all lasted for at least half an hour. At one point, Kim tried to call her bodyguard, which is a bit strange because surely you'd just call the police in that situation. Her bodyguard probably wouldn't have been able to fight off up to 5 armed men and could have risked being shot himself. If it was staged though, it makes sense because Kim wouldn't want the police to walk in on it. In the reenactment, Abdul shows how duct tape was wrapped around Kim's wrists, ankles and over her mouth without mentioning her eyes. Kim stated that tape was also put over her eyes, and not only tape was used, she was handcuffed and tied up with zip ties as well. The men found Kim's jewellery box and emptied its contents. Then she was taken into the bathroom where Kim claims she was put into the bathtub, then taken out and put on the floor, while Abdul remembers her being put straight on the floor, specifying that she wasn't put in the bathtub. The robbers left after this, and it's not exactly clear what happened to Abdul. Some sources state that he was taken downstairs and left by an emergency exit. Some sources imply that he had just been locked up in a cupboard this whole time, meaning he wouldn't have even witnessed any of this. I'm inclined to believe that he was there with Kim, but it's strange how there are so many different versions of events. At some point, Kim's friend and stylist, Simone Harouche, who was staying in a room nearby, heard a commotion, so locked herself in the bathroom and, like Kim, initially called Pascal rather than the police. It appears that she was the only person to hear anything and that no other guests entered or left the hotel during the robbery. Meanwhile, Kim somehow managed to break free of her restraints. If we're to believe Abdul, the men only used duct tape, but even that would be quite hard to break through if it was wrapped around a few times. But Kim claimed that she was handcuffed and zip-tied as well. I can't really picture any scenario where she'd be able to get herself out of that. She was also photographed by paparazzi shortly after and had no visible marks on her wrists. It's not impossible that some of these details could be wrong because Kim and Abdul simply misremembered. It would be a very traumatic event, and in those kind of situations, it's not uncommon for people to get small details wrong. But the handcuff duct tape zip tie thing is pretty baffling to me. Kim was caught on video shortly after the robbery on her phone, looking pretty chilled out considering what had just happened. I think that's one of the weaker points to suggest this was all staged though. She could have been video calling family, and she probably wasn't going to be visibly hysterical the whole time after. There were quite a few people in the apartment, despite police seemingly still investigating the scene, which seems a bit odd, but it's hard to know the context of the video. Crime scene photos emerged, and one supposedly showed the gag and a zip tie used in the robbery. Kim claimed that tape was placed over her mouth as opposed to a gag, and the thing in the photo does look like it could be folded tape, but it just somehow doesn't look like tape that has just been stuck over someone's mouth. It's way more than would be needed, and it doesn't fit with Abdul's demonstration of how the tape was applied. He recalled a single strip placed over the mouth. The zip tie in the photo is a bit strange as well because it can't have been one of the ones that Kim broke out of, it's still closed. And it doesn't seem feasible that she could have squeezed her hands through that because it's quite a small hole. A few months ago, Kim was interviewed by David Letterman and she spoke about the robbery. I've seen her behaviour interpreted in different ways. Some think she was acting and had probably been told exactly what to say by her PR, but others don't think she's that good an actor and find her account believable. So that can really be taken either way, it's not objective evidence. Aside from details about that night not adding up, things in Kim's past make people wonder if she might lie about something like this. I mentioned before the whole situation with Taylor Swift, where Kim manipulated the public into thinking Taylor approved all of Kanye's lyrics about her, when it turned out she wasn't even aware of all of them. We'd be here all day if I covered all the lies that Kim has been accused of telling, but one of the first ones was about baking some cookies, and there have been countless since. It's not even the first time she has been accused of faking a story like this. In 2007, Kim claimed that somewhere between $50,000 and $500,000 worth of jewellery, reports vary, was stolen from her bags at the JFK airport. Kim and Kourtney stopped to sign some autographs, and when the crowd dispersed, they noticed the items were missing. It's not been definitively proven that this was a hoax, but the circumstances are pretty suspicious. Again, she somehow didn't have security guarding her bags. While Delta gave her claim tickets straight away, after investigating, they were unable to find any evidence of a theft, despite it supposedly happening in broad daylight with cameras everywhere. A police report was never even filed for this either, which is certainly questionable. Then there was the iconic moment where Kim lost her diamond earring in the sea. Some people believe it was staged to make the episode more entertaining. Kim's sister Kylie supposedly found the earring and the back within a couple of minutes, despite it being in the sea in water that was about 10 foot deep. Obviously this was never made out to be a robbery, but it's interesting that she has a habit of losing diamonds or them being stolen, and yet she hasn't learnt to be more careful. Kim was reportedly worried about something like this happening, though at the time she had no qualms about sharing her location on social media and bringing all of her jewels with her to Paris. She stated, quote, "I brought all my jewels, everything I possibly had, to Paris with me." I know it was Fashion Week, but that does still seem a little bit excessive, and she didn't even think to put them in a safe. But what reason would Kim have to fake all this? There are a few possible reasons. Earlier that year, Kanye stated that he was $53 million in debt and even tweeted at Mark Zuckerberg asking him to invest $1 billion into his ideas. The jewellery that was stolen was insured, so if she staged the robbery, she got back all the money she lost and potentially made more money selling the jewellery to the robbers. Season 12 of Keeping Up with the Kardashians aired a few months prior and ratings had dropped significantly. There were even rumours the show was being cancelled. An incident this dramatic would almost definitely attract some people's attention. It's basically a fact at this point that the Kardashians have faked things to boost their ratings. It wouldn't even be unreasonable to question whether the show is more fake than real at this point. Obviously the robbery wasn't caught on camera, so it's not like they'd be able to show it on the show, but they could at least talk about it, and I think they have done quite a few times. It also seemed that people were just starting to get a bit sick of the Kardashians at this point. People were questioning why they were even famous, and they were involved in controversy after controversy. This could help to humanise Kim and even make people feel sorry for her. It's been noted that the timing of the robbery and when Kanye found out was convenient because he found out right in the middle of a show, but after he'd already performed some songs, so he didn't have to and he didn't end up giving refunds or rearranging. A few months after the robbery, 17 men were arrested in connection with the crime, one of whom being Kim's chauffeur. 11 or 12 were charged, reports vary. The men who actually entered the apartment were all aged between 60 and 72. One of the men was 67-year-old Eunice Abbas, who admitted to his involvement and bizarrely recently published a book about his life story and his role in the heist. His DNA was found at the scene, although I have no idea where. Some reports say it was on a jewel in the street that he dropped, and others say there was no DNA found on that jewel. Either way, there's pretty much no question that he was involved, though that doesn't rule out Kim orchestrating it. It's not like they couldn't have kind of acted out the situation to make the scene appear more believable when police arrived, and possibly to make Abdul believe it was real if he wasn't involved, and to ensure that any CCTV footage would support Kim's story. You might wonder why Eunice wouldn't throw Kim under the bus with hopes of getting a lesser sentence if she really did arrange it, but it's probably worse for a snitch out of prison than it is for a robber who didn't snitch in prison. And as far as I know, he hasn't revealed who gave him the job, so it's not unlikely that he wouldn't try to implicate Kim. According to France24.com, Eunice spent his life in and out of jail and was offered the Kardashian heist at a time when he needed the money. Whether this was real or set up, he stood to gain a substantial amount of money, and it sounds like he was willing to take the risk. It didn't work out, and now he's probably just cutting his losses and hoping that a judge will go easy on him because he confessed. What's interesting about Eunice's account of the night is that a few details differ from Kim and Abdul's stories. For example, while Abdul said the whole ordeal lasted at least 30 minutes, Eunice claims that they were in and out in 5 to 7 minutes, which would make more sense. He also claims that he remained on the ground floor and didn't enter Kim's apartment, but said that she tried to call 911 at first, even though she was in France. I'm not sure how he'd know that if he wasn't there, unless one of the other men told him, but Kim only says that she called Pascal. Bizarrely, he told how Kim's phone rang after he stole it, and he saw that Tracy Chapman was calling, which would be odd considering I couldn't find any information to suggest that Tracy and Kim are even acquaintances. Overall, I think there's a chance that this was staged, but I don't think it's likely. There are a lot of details that don't add up, and I can totally see it being hard to believe that not all of those inconsistencies can be explained by bad memory, so I'm not really sure why there are so many. But it's a huge thing to lie about and came with great risk. Kim would risk going to prison for lying about something like this. That doesn't mean she didn't. I mean, she is debatably a compulsive liar, and I'm sure she could have found a way to ensure none of this could be traced back to her. But if it was an insurance scam, I can't help but think that there might be less risky ways for her to make a claim. While there are a few things that you could point out in the David Letterman interview that could possibly suggest deceit, I personally found her account and her emotion pretty believable, and I think the fact that she stayed out of the public eye for so long after suggests that she was probably shaken up by this. I wouldn't rule out someone who worked for Kim or even one of the hotel staff tipping off the robbers because the timing was pretty convenient. But there's no evidence to suggest that Kim had any involvement with planning any of this, and the police have never even hinted that they thought that Kim might be involved, despite there being a few suspicious details. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Kim's story, and if so, how would you explain the inconsistencies? Or are there any other theories that you believe in relation to the robbery? If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Thursday in a new video.